Hi, everybody coming in. Just give it a second for a few more people to join us. I hope you're having a wonderful day, wherever you may be, evening, afternoon, morning for some people. So I'll start anyway. As it normally happens, people join whenever they are available. So we've had a good registration for this talk. I'm really excited by this talk. It's an unusual one for me because I'm actually usually at my desk and everything's pretty calm and chilled. But I just got through the security at Atlanta Airport, if you know that, one of the busiest in the world, and I'm trying to find I found a quiet corner in Atlanta Airport, which is a godsend. So I'm in the airport, I'm on the go, but that's what these calls are about. I'm particularly excited, and I'll introduce Ted in a second. What I wanted to also just point out for those that were in the waiting room before the call, we're now going to get into a habit monthly of showcasing new members that have joined Known Unknown. It's a great opportunity for us to just kind of like share what they've been doing wherever they are in the world, whatever type of creative discipline. And so month by month, you'll see new members through their work in quote that green room. If you are a member of Known Unknown, thank you. If you're not and you want to sign up, then we would be honored for you to join us, and we'll of course showcase your work as well. So that's my little plug for Known Unknown. I think now I want to talk about move on to the topic of today, which is exciting for me. I'm a huge fan of the history of brands. I find them fascinating. And Ted Ryan is a good friend of mine, a former colleague. We first met 10, 15 years ago, actually, when I joined Coca-Cola, and he was the kind of chief archivist, the man that knew everything about the history of Coke. And so Ted taught me so much about those 125 years, I think it was at the time, of course, of one of the greatest brands ever to exist. So I really got to appreciate what the archives can provide a creative team today. And as Ted referred to it as, or we were talking about this theme, looking in the rear view mirror, because we're going to move on to cars now, is important as we drive forward as a brand and as creatives. So Ted will do his own introduction, but I reconnected with Ted when he joined the Ford Motor Company, and he's now kind of part of the brand team and really sort of like stewarding another iconic, incredibly rich history of a brand. And again, when I was working with Ford for a couple of years, I had the pleasure of seeing all that work in the archives at Ford. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ted Ryan. We're going to touch on naming and colors. Normally it's font names, brand names, Pantone colors. This is a very sort of different type of naming and color conversation. Hopefully you'll find it as inspiring as I have done. And Ted, say hi to everyone. I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to knock my camera off because I'm in the airport. I'll go on mute, but I'm in the background listening. You can share screens. Hi, Ted.
Perfect. Hey, everybody. Like James said, I'm Ted Ryan, Archives and Heritage Brand Manager for Ford Motor Company. And that was one of the things that was appealing to me as I left Coca-Cola to go to Ford when they were recruiting me, is the actual title of Heritage Brand Manager. Because at Ford, we're actually they treat heritage like a brand, just like Mustang or Transit or GT or any of the other brands that they have. Prior to Ford, as James said, I was at Coca-Cola for 21 years. Uh, Fantastic job, one of the best jobs in the world. Prior to that, was the Bobby Jones curator, and created and curated exhibits at Augusta National, and built the Atlanta Braves Museum. So basically, sports with the Braves and golf, and then Coca-Cola for 21 years, and now on to Ford. So brand history is my passion. I love it. You can't work with a brand like Coca-Cola or a brand like Ford or a brand like Mustang or F-150 or you name it, uh, without falling in love with the thing that makes it recognizable. Uh, so anyway, that is the background. Let me go ahead and I'll start sharing my screen. And when James called me, I was driving down the road in Detroit and trying to focus on what we were saying. But the two things that jumped out that are sort of ways to look back, ways to look forward, and every one of the examples I'm going to give and show could be about the future and are about the future. So naming, colors, and systems at Ford over the years. And we'll start with naming. Naming is the sport of kings, is what Lee Iacocca said. For those that don't know, he was the one that helped develop the Mustang, and then he went back later and helped save Chrysler. But what the vehicles are called tells you so much about the vehicles. And Ford actually has had a couple of different systems and a couple of different ways of coming up with those names. The first one is easy. It's simple. Henry Ford decided to use the alphabet. Ford from 1903 until 1927, did nothing but alphabet cars. We started with the Model A in 1903 and ended up with the Model T in 1908. And in between there were B's and C's and N's and K's, and they just used the alphabet and went down the chart from there. Other companies were using numbers as well. So I think Porsche was using numerical ones. Well, Ford happened to use an alphabetical one at the beginning. And I'm going to take a second to talk about the car that changed the world, the Model T. It is hard to overestimate the impact of the Model T. In essence, it democratized transportation. Suddenly, everybody could afford to get from point A to point B. The price point on the Model T when it started was $850 in 1908. By 1920, that price had dropped down to $250. Essentially, it was about a $8,000 to $12,000 car. So it was a car that was affordable to everybody. Editorially, I think you're seeing the same thing happen now with the Chinese EVs that are coming in at that $10,000 range, and how companies are going to react to that. But happened once before with the Model T. Whoop, the my screen has frozen. I have to go this way. The thing that changed the world was the Model T and the fact that the mass production allowed enormous quantities of the vehicles to be built. This is $1,000 units a day, which was one day's output. And the thing that changed that was the integrated moving assembly line. Henry Ford didn't actually invent it. The assembly line had been around before. It was used by armament companies and was used in meatpacking industry, but he was the first to apply it to the automobile manufacturer. And the genius of the assembly line wasn't the fact that a car went down a line. It was the fact that it had multiple sub-assemblies. You can see in this particular case, radiators and tires are being delivered at the exact moment they're needed within it. At one point, the Model T had 57% of the global share of market and was sold everywhere. It was a car that literally changed the world. Unfortunately for Henry Ford, he was pretty stuck in his ways and he calcified and he never really made advances to the Model T. By 1927, Ford went from 57% of the world's share down to being number three in the United States alone with only 21% of just the US market. They went back to the drawing board, and Edsel Ford, his son, designed and had built the Model A. So they went back to the alphabet again, and Edsel called it a new beginning. Well, they did a new beginning, but they didn't really get too creative on the naming. The thing that I love about the Model A, and you'll see it in this picture, uh, this was the first vehicle to ever have the blue oval that you can see on the front in front of the radiator. So 1927, when Edsel designed the Model A, he took the existing blue oval that had been used in Ford advertising and applied it to the car, and he called it a shield. So it was the shield that was protecting and driving Ford Motor Company. It was a tremendously popular car. After that, Ford got really creative. We called the 1949 Ford the 1949 Ford. We quit using the alphabet and we just were, it was the four door, the two-door Ford. It was just the model year and then the name Ford. After that, in the mid 50s, they did start to, did begin to get more creative. You can see in this particular picture, you've got the Thunderbird, which is the first vehicle. It's the one on the right. The Continental Mark II is the one on the left. The Thunderbird was the first time that Ford really got creative and looked for a name that had meaning. And not to bore you with too much history, but after the war, a group of Army Air Corps logistics officers, 11 of them, called the Whiz Kids, came in and they changed the way that Ford did manufacturing. They were all about systems and about process. And so Ford went from basically a one man, one vote with Henry Ford prior to World War II. After the war, the Whiz Kids modernized Ford Motor Company. And in the process of that modernization, they began to establish systems both for naming, for vehicle production, for anticipating what the sales were going to be. GM had been doing this for decades, by the way. Ford was late to the party, but as soon as we got into it, the Thunderbird was really the first one that was picked, and it was picked because of the symbolism of the Thunderbird. It was the Ford's first two-seater.
Hey, Ted.
Yeah,
Quick question, Ted, just to not to upset your flow, but to just give you a second to breathe.
impossible
Um,
to upset my flow. Go for it.
I just thought I'd ask a question regarding the Blue Oval. Really
Yeah.
intrigued about when that came in. I think you mentioned, if we could just go back to that for a second, because a lot of us on the call will be graphic designers, branding, that's a really important moment in the history of the brand. You mentioned that it was maybe extracted from a marketing campaign or an ad campaign. So there was maybe an agency that did that. And is there a story behind the blue? Was there a rationale behind the blue? Is there anything that you could share with us around that particular mark that we know today, the Blue Oval, and when it was given birth back in, I think you said the 40s or 50s?
Yes, well, it was actually before that, but so on the Blue Oval and on the script, well, ironically for me, the script is nothing but Spencerian script, exactly the same script as Coca-Cola. Well-known business script at the time, just about the same uh, reasoning behind it. Coke picked it because it was recognizable and because the logo was done by Frank Robinson, who was the bookkeeper, and it was a handwriting he was familiar with. In Ford's particular case, they picked the Spencerian script because of the standardization. Uh,
Right.
because in essence, that's really what Henry Ford was all about. The Model T and the assembly line and all of those were mass standardization projects. So, but then he put it in the blue. He didn't put it in the blue. Let me rephrase that. It was the marketing. It wasn't an agency per se, James. They weren't around back then. But as early as the early 1910s, we're already using that blue, and they did it because it stood out in advertising, and they did it in conjunction with the dealers. So the dealers were looking for something that had an identifiable mark. The script was there, and then they put it inside the blue oval.
Mhm.
Uh, Very much like Coke, it didn't change much over the years. You saw the evolution. Sometimes it would be a little bit more elongated. Sometimes the color would be a little deeper blue. But it's been essentially the same blue oval device. What was different was it wasn't ever used on a vehicle. It wasn't used as a badge. The badging was nuts. The badging at that particular point in time was Katie bar the door, whatever you could come up with. So some of the vehicles had Greyhound, some had what looked like coat of arms. Uh, Ford put the script on the radiator of the Model T. So when Edsel got a hold of it, he was more refined and more artistic, and he liked the blue and the script and put it on the car like a badge, like a shield.
Got
And
it.
so
Great.
1927, that was when it changed.
Great story. Thanks for sharing. Sorry for the interruption. We've got Edsel there on stage, his name. So
Yeah, yeah,
back to
yeah.
your
And
back to your deck.
feel
But
if anything else pops in or a good question comes up in chat that feels timely, jump in
yep,
again.
we'll do.
Otherwise, I'm doing a monologue and it gets kind of boring. Uh, the Edsel is an interesting story. Edsel Ford was Henry's son, the most underappreciated man in automotive history. How can you come out of the limelight of Henry Ford? Edsel actually did. Fantastic designer, designed the Lincoln Zephyr, the Lincoln Continental, designed the Model A, fantastic automobile designer. When Ford was looking for a product in the mid 50s, we did exactly the wrong thing. It's ironically, I already talked about the script logo with Coke and Ford. With Coke and Ford, I had New Coke with Coke, and I had the Edsel, the greatest automotive failure in automotive history, in my ballywick. And thankfully, both led to learnings and changes over time. The Edsel started off as the e-car. This is how to not do a name. The project was called the e-car because it was going to be midway between the Continental and the Mercury, which was the Ford had three, and then Ford brands. We had Ford was the base car, the cheapest car. The Mercury a little bit more expensive, and at the time Continental the most expensive. They were looking for one in between, so they did the E project, and then it just grew into being called the Edsel. Bad choice for a name, and the car was a complete and utter disaster. At this point, a name that you may recognize for bad reasons, Robert McNamara, later Secretary of Defense, who got us deeper into Vietnam. At that point, he was head of the Ford unit, and he was one of the whiz kids who had come in. He created a much more systematic way for doing the names. I love this particular graphic, almost as tough as naming your kid. This is when the Ford Falcon, was named, and you can see they did this enormous search. They started off with 10,000 names, and a lot of them get excluded because of other trademarks that are held by other manufacturers. But then they looked for the meaning, and they did marketing research, which they hadn't done on the Edsel, to find out how the name was resonating. And the Falcon is considered a swift, sleek bird, predator bird, but beautiful in flight. So that was what they were looking for, something that conveyed beauty. And the name Falcon is the one that was chosen. And then after the Falcon, well, actually, I put this one in here specifically just to show you how important naming is with an automobile company. Hell, for that matter, any company, any brand. You'll see on the note that's on my left. Henry Ford II has indicated an interest in knowing what the car division merchandising and nomenclature plans are. We actually had a nomenclature department, and some of the items that you see on your screen, I just went back to the nomenclature files, which began in 1955 to show how the names came to be. You can see on that one on the left that the sporty car became a car that everybody is going to know when I get to it in a couple of slides. And then the document on the right, you can see how quickly when your chairman, CEO, and head of the company sends a note saying, "Hey, what are the plans for the nomenclature in the sporty car?" How quickly it gets answered. Well, that sporty car was, you can see a couple different names. Are we going to keep it a bird designation? Note the system, like the Falcon or the Thunderbird. Or should we move to another way, the Cougar or the Mustang? But then they advocated calling it the Thunderbird 2. So do you know how close the Mustang came to being called the Thunderbird 2? What a disaster to have like the inconsequential sequel is what the Mustang would have looked like. Thankfully, calmer heads prevailed, but not immediately. This is actually the very first studio clay of the Mustang. And if you look at the icon on the front, it's a cougar. And if I could blow up that photo even more, you would see the name Cougar on the side of it. This was going all the way up until November of 63. The Mustang, keep in mind, came out in April of 64. So just 5 months before the car came out, nobody could quite make up their mind what the car was going to be called. Thankfully, they did the Mustang. And you'll notice with the emblem, the horse is facing what in most horse racing discussions would be the wrong way. The horse is facing to the left. Well, that was because the designer that did it felt more comfortable drawing horses going to the left than to the right. But it's one of those things that with urban myth and with the lore over time, you've gotten all these different theories on why the horse is facing the direction that it's facing. My next story is how the E series. So I always get asked, did O.J. Simpson kill the Bronco? Nope, Bronco was dead as a program even before O.J. and his slow speed chase. The Bronco replacement program started uh, in 1994, 2 years before. But it's interesting that the Bronco replacement program was called the E program. And what it led to was the Ford Explorer. Well, when Ford sinks its teeth into something, then and even now today with what we're doing, uh, they came up with the E motif, and so you had the Explorer. Well, then the next car that came along, and you can see the story in Marine's Tribute, how the Expedition was named to honor the Corps. The Expedition became the next part of the E series, and you can see the design. One of the lead designers on the program was in the Marines, and then he named it after the Expedition. But then it became the E series. So you get the Escape, you get the Edge, the Expedition, and the Explorer. So Ford does things when we get going one direction, we keep going that direction. I didn't put a picture of the Model 3 from Tesla in here, but there is an interesting side story that Elon Musk reached out to Ford to see if he could. We had the trademark for Model E because we had trademarked it in keeping in mind with this E series that we might use it for an electric vehicle that we did. In the end, we actually did the Mach E instead of the Model E. But the funny thing for me is that Musk wanted it because he wanted to be able to spell out sexy with this fleet, which is why you have the Model S and the Model Y and the Model X. So he was going to spell out the word sexy, but we wouldn't let him have the E designation. And
So
it can,
what would
yeah.
if this is maybe none of us know the answer to this, but there would have been a price tag attached to that. People might say everything has a price tag. That was just never going to be released, like ever in history, or it was just, it was just not the right time. And
Was
there
not the right
and
time because Jim Farley, our CEO, he was head of Ford at North America at the time and would have been the one making that call. Farley probably would have done it for the right price. But we were knee deep in uh, work electrifying our vehicles. We had begun in 1969. We had done another model in 2000. We just weren't as advanced as Tesla was. And we didn't anticipate that there was a market like Tesla had. So we were hanging on to that one. And we used a variation of it with the Mach-E. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during those conversations. So
yeah,
that's it on naming. I could have, there are different, I could have gone 100 different directions. If we've got anybody in England or Germany, the Transit, or in Europe, best known vehicle in the world. It's the to Europe what the F-150 is to the United States, and it was chosen because it was a trim level on a German van. So 60
you,
years ago, when they were looking for a common van, they chose a trim level from the German van and made it the name of the universal van. Whereas in the United States, we kept Econoline as our name, but then we converted over to Transit a decade ago. I'm sorry, James, you were asking?
I was just thinking, looking forward, let's say 10 years, 20 years from now, and obviously maybe everything's driverless at that point. Who knows? Do you think that that's naming pattern that is part of the history will continue as part of the identity of a range of vehicles? And many other cars do that as well. They have the one, two, three, or they have a numerical or a name. Do you think that going forward that structure would continue in new vehicles that we don't even know that exist today?
I think it will splinter at some point because the vehicles themselves are splintering. And this is conjecture, no inside knowledge is conjecture, but I think that it will splinter because the variety and types of the vehicles are changing. The one story I left off because I was worried about time was the Bronco is actually called the Bronco uh, because of the Mustang. The Mustang and the Bronco were in development at the same time. Bronco was the code name for the project, and when they finally settled on Mustang, that's when they went to Bronco, and later to Pinto, and later to Maverick to keep the horsey theme. You saw the discussion on that one Mustang slide about keeping a bird theme. Well, they went to a horsey theme up until they did the E development, and I'm part of the nomenclature team, and I see names, and we provide names uh, for the nomenclature team. Uh, And I can tell you there is so much thought that goes into every single name, not just for the vehicle itself, but for the packages, for like the Blue Cruise package, for Microsoft or for Ford Sync, for all the every one of the components within the vehicle uh, is is thought out and is looked at deeply.
What comes first? The name, the vehicle design. Uh, the name obviously then leads to the badging. Is there a sort of a design process or a linear process that
Design
in the
first.
yeah,
Design.
so the actual need, maybe there's a need. Okay, that's the first thing. But just in terms of the creative phases as we go through the vehicle itself, and then we're like, okay, we have this vehicle. What shall we call it? Is it kind of something like that, or does it run at the same time?
uh, at the same time, but slightly after design. Design goes
Okay,
first. What are we designing? We're designing a three-row passenger SUV. Okay, so what slot is that going to fit into? And then it goes from there. But I was part of the naming of the Bronco Sport, and Bronco Sport was a 1972 to 1974 trim level package for a sporty first generation Bronco. And when we were looking for the smaller version of the Bronco, we didn't want to go too far afield. It needed to be a Bronco. And then Bronco Junior. Well, that doesn't uh, up until the very end, there were a couple of different names, and Bronco Sport. We knew we had it protected because we had used it before, and that gave us the ability to
right.
reuse it. But the actual design on the vehicle had been going on before it got to that level.
Great, great insight. And the quote so far that I think I'm going to make everybody a t-shirt, design goes first. So it's
And we work. I sort of short. Well, I was going to do it in the next. From here we go to colors, and I'll talk a little bit
yeah,
more about how we uh, we work with design. Uh, and because one of my favorite stories is James had started at Coke, and he came down and he was going to do a visual guide for Coke photography and artwork. What is the Coke look and feel? And so he literally spent a day and a half in the archives opening up drawers, looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, ultimately thousands of different ads, taking pictures on his phone to come up with this common look and feel. We've done similar things. I talked about the Bronco already. I'll get there in a minute when we talk about color. Any color as long as you want, as long as it's black. That was a famous Henry Ford quote. He actually did say it. Most of the quotes you see out there attributed to Henry Ford, he didn't say, but that particular one he did. But that wasn't always the case. That came a little bit later. This is the very first Ford produced, and as you can see, it's a bright red. It's 1903 Model A, actually owned by Bill Ford. Not ironically, but very very nice car. Green was the main color Ford used for a while. From 1903 until 1908, most of the cars that we were doing were green. Some were black, some were white, but green was the predominant color. This, by the way, not to bore you, is a Model C. So this is yet another version of one of the alphabet cars. From 1913 until 1924, every single car we made was Japan black. And that's because of the assembly line. In order to, in the early days, that 1904 Model C, it would have taken 2 days to paint that car because you had to put a layer of paint on and then another layer of paint. In some cases, they were hand painted. The spray technology wasn't that good. It would have to be hand lacquered. By the time the assembly line came along, there was a certain type of lacquered Japan paint that dried quickly. And in order to get that 1,000 units a day done, we had to paint the cars black. So every single Model T for more than a decade was black. So that's the source of that Henry Ford quote. I actually sent James a couple of documents yesterday going, this is right up your alley. But I love this. This is from a 1955 speech. Color is a fantastic marketing tool. It can be a boon or a bane. It all depends on how you use it and how clever you are. Uh, it's one of our most important design and marketing tools, which is the truth. But if you think about it, going from a decade plus of nothing but black cars, how do you begin to figure out what the colors are? Uh, we actually have still a color and fabrics department that's all they do is the marketing research on how colors are and what colors are going to become popular. This is a 1932 color guide showing, shortly after the Model A was developed. In this particular case, 32 would be significant. Your car buffs out there are going to know it. It's the introduction of the flathead Ford V8 engine, and the Model B was what they had come up with. They hadn't stretched too far. They Model A in 27, Model B in 32, but you can see that you can already get it in a different variety of colors and interior tone patterns. This is that 55 document I sent James yesterday. If you look down at the bottom of it, color options today, this is 1955, not, a little bit post-war, right at the time when Ford is really standardizing our business procedures. Color options available today on any one Ford product exceed the total number available, and all three, by three, they mean Ford, Lincoln, Mercury, prior to World War II. So the color genie is out of the bag. And what does it begin to look like? Well, it looks fun. Our market research would do the research to see what was popular at any given time. And what I love is the names of the colors. We talked about names of vehicles. These names of colors are chosen just as thoughtfully as the vehicle name is, because the color name is going to be evocative, is going to be a marketing tool. So if you do Thunderbird bronze, well, you know that that's going to be it's going to look beautiful on the Thunderbird, and it may only be on the Thunderbird. It's amazing if you look at the colors over time, which I'll show you Mustang later, but essentially white, green, and red are almost always the most popular colors over time. Blue has crept up in the intervening years, but you can see the plethora of colors that are coming to life now.
Hey,
And
Ted, quick
yeah,
question, Ted, on that
go for
color
it.
chart. Uh,
Yeah.
Again, for the creatives in the room, super interesting how there was a naming of the color and the vehicle. So the complexity of that, but also the richness. And do these colors exist today? Could you order a vehicle today and reference a historical archive color from Ford? Or no, these have been sort of grandfathered out, and there's a whole
They've
new
been
range of colors today.
grandfathered out, except that Ford worked pretty much. We worked very closely with DuPont and with Sherwin-Williams. There were like three paint houses that we used, and you can actually take some of these color samples. At the end of the presentation, my archives email is going to be in there, but we get requests all the time from people who have vintage vehicles to be able to color match. And in some cases, we have the metal, which is even better. But you can actually color match these at most of the local or some of the national paint companies. I didn't put any
Got it.
upholstery in here because it was getting too complex, but the upholstery fabrics also had names that were chosen that were marketing tools as well. So the vehicle has a name, the packages have a name, the colors have a name, and the fabric has a name. Everything communicates in a marketing design world around the automobiles. And if you walk out today, or if you go to a build and price site now for any vehicle from almost any manufacturer, it's going to be almost exactly the same.
Yeah, a question from Matt in the chat. Has Ford used color psychology to select colors? I guess historically or today? And thanks, Matt. I know Matt. And Matt, I originally met when he was at McDonald's. So there's a brand with kind of like an iconic color. Is there any
Kind of
psychology to all these
no,
colors?
yeah, we did use color psychology, and I thought it would be boring to put in too many documents, so I mainly did colors. But we do have complete sets of documents that talk about, okay, for the 1958 year, we anticipate that X, Y, and Z are going to be the most popular. Our marketing research is telling us that this is what we should do moving forward. So color psychology, but probably more carefully, probably safer to describe it as color marketing more than psychology.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, Ted.
Cool. I love the two tones. We still do it today, and if anybody's a child of the '70s, they'll remember the F-150s with the two-tone colors. But very popular in the '60s, and we actually have. I couldn't get a video of one, but we have these amazing guides that it's a pinwheel, and it will let you show what your two colors are going to look like, and then your third be your upholstery. So you have a miniature version. You have an AI version, 1956 style, that shows you what the vehicle is going to look like. Uh, and I talked about the other naming. So notice on that ad, the new lifeguard door latches. Well, Ford was the first American automobile manufacturer. We were shortly after Saab and Volvo to really focus on vehicle safety and the lifeguard system with padded steering wheels with all the dashboards was designed specifically as a safety measure. I picked this one because of the two tone, but look at the naming device of a feature within the vehicle itself. I love this one from the show or from the floor of the Rue, showing all the different two tone color patterns that were possible at the time. Believe me, America in the '50s, we were living large. People worry about the orange and yellow and purple cars you see on the road today. I think it was even crazier in the '50s. Once again, a '50s two-tone vehicle on display. Here, this one, I believe, yeah, dated 1966. I picked it for a couple of reasons. 1962, white was the most popular, followed by brown and blue and black. This is the beginning of Ford actually issuing press releases almost every single year. We don't do any more talking about what the most popular color had been the year before. Almost like, your Spotify Wrapped. We were doing a color Wrapped document every year. I picked this one in particular because Wimbledon white was iconic color that was associated, and you can see it. I think it's the third paragraph or down there, talking about Wimbledon white. Oh, I did. I forgot I had this one. I reversed the order of these two slides. The very first Mustang was Wimbledon white, but you can see as well that within the color palette. Some vehicles only get certain colors. So there's some distinctive to Mustang and some distinctive to Thunderbird, but then there's some shared colors between the two. And then you can see the vinyl, who I'm sure everybody over a certain age is going to remember exactly how hot that interior vinyl upholstery got in the summer. But you can see the different types of trim and work that you'd put in there. But move forward to slide one
Question,
more.
Ted, from
Yeah.
from Jonathan in the chat. Really great question here. Do you think that the creatives who were coming up with those colors at the time were concerned with legacy, or were they actually just designing for the day, for the audience of the day? And that question is sort of framed because most designers today, we're always trying to kind of create something that will last and stand the test of time, but we are in a world today where nobody has patience. Everybody's scrolling and flipping from screen to screen, and so it has to be immediate impact today. What do you think they were thinking back then? Is it immediate impact, designing for the moment, or kind of building a legacy of color?
I the immediate impact and later legacy. I talked to Hal Sperlich, who was the guy that was behind the Mustang. Iacocca gets the credit, and he deserves most of it, but Sperlich is one that actually did the weekly meetings. They were trying to get the airplane off the ground while they were building it and doing the Mustang. And after the fact, he was glad that they did Wimbledon White as the first vehicle, but they didn't set out to do Wimbledon White as the first vehicle because they knew it was going to be historically important. Over the years, Wimbledon White has been the most popular color for Mustang. So it was one of the chicken egg ones where they were just trying to get it up and going. Then again, I work with Lori Madey all the time, and she is interior, or she's graphic and everything. She's designed everything about the car except the way the car looks. So interior badging, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And I did a project for her, pretty similar to what I did for you back at Coke, where we did a survey of every single badge that had been on every car at Ford from 1955 until today to see if there had been any consistent use of the oval versus the script trademark versus the block letter trademark. And there isn't. It's mind-boggling that on the Mustang we've used the script logo, we've used the blue oval, and we've had just the word Ford and block lettering on the front.
Hmm.
There was no consistency, so they were designing for the moment with what they thought looked good. That within Ford, I don't think that you'll see that continuing because I think that we're getting better at consistency. Because that's the only way you build a brand is consistency over time. Coke didn't change its logo, Ford didn't change its logo. That's how you build a brand. And if you change too quickly, you lose the other element. Sorry, I went from color to branding, but it
No,
fascinates.
it's great. It's great.
Uh,
I think what that question sort of helps me, and maybe is just the designers of today are looking for that sort of legacy work, but the clients of today are looking for immediate recognition, whether they're a startup, 100-year-old iconic brand that are looking to refresh. But it's all about speed
yeah.
and impact. So it's just interesting to know how things have changed and what was going through their minds
Yeah,
back in the day.
I'm going to speed up to so we can finish and get some questions. I picked this one in because the Grabber uh, is such a popular color series today, and you can see them on the orange and the blue, Grabber orange, Grabber blue, Grabber green. This is where you see the bright colors come into life. In the 70s, the incredibly popular series, bright colors, orange really begins to stand out, particularly in the Bronco lineup. Uh, Here's some Gran Torino. If anybody's Starsky and Hutch fan, here it is. But this is showing the vibrant colors that were coming to life then, uh, with all the different type of colors. And then this is the metallicized, where you really begin to see the way that the cars are done. You can see available in three colors: metallic ivy glow, metallic blue, and metallic gold glow, where the colors are changing over time. This particular slide, and this is the way that it changed over time too. It actually, this one's from the late 70s, I think 79. But you can see the numbering system and the naming system. And once again, they're exclusive to different types of vehicles. I teased it earlier. So here's your most popular Mustang colors over time. If you look at the numbers, so black and white, candy apple red, and silver metallic have been the most popular ones over time. I was surprised when we did this. It took a lot of work to do this. That red wasn't most popular, but then again, candy apple was just one specific color year, and that was 200,000, and that four different ones. I think I've got another chart that shows that red and blue and white are pretty much neck and neck and neck for the most popular colors over time. But that Wimbledon white was one of the leaders in the pack. One project, and this is the way that we work with the different design teams. Our new world headquarters just opened up. We developed a chart that had every single color that Ford had ever used, and we gave it to the designers. In this case, it was Jen Kolstad, who's head of Ford design for Ford Land. Ford has a bunch of different design groups, and James, I know you worked with some of them. The designers working on the
Mhm.
cars, one's working on the badging, colors. Jen is Ford Land, and she created or had an artist create a color motif showing this. I don't think this is every single color, but it's almost every color that Ford ever did. And we have a little naming chart that goes along with it. It's one of those, and this came about because Jen and her team were visiting the archives, and we actually pulled out all of the color guides, those papers that I've had been showing over for Mustang and for Bronco. We would lay them out on tables just to show the diversity of color and the way color changes and morphs over time. And that gave her the idea to work with the designers to come up with this fantastic art installation that is the very first thing that you see when you walk in the new Ford World headquarters that just opened a couple of weeks ago. So exciting moment for the archives to see our stuff expressed on the wall. Now, if anybody likes cars, I'm going to do a quick sales pitch. The Ford Heritage Vault is our website, 25,000 downloadable files, every brochure Ford has ever done, and pictures of every car from 1903 to 1920. Everything is free and available for download. Here's a sample screen. You can do a search. In this case, I think we did a search under camping, and then there's a detailed record page that will let you download free to your desktop. We don't have the color guides in there. That's one of the things that we've talked about doing in future years. But right now, you can get a lot of that color information out of the brochures. And then finally, there it is, FordHeritageVault.com, or we have a public-facing archives email address, archives@ford.com, that you can write us if you have any questions. We don't support like major books being written, but we'll answer just about any other type of question. With that, James, I am done. We can take some questions now.
Great. Thank you, Ted. Um, that was fantastic. I'm still here. I'm on camera now. First question coming in, and feel free, anyone, if you have another question for Ted while we have him for another 5-10 minutes, to just pop anything in the chat. Question from Elizabeth: what's one thing, and this is more sort of branding, less about the organization, but what's one or two things that Ford should never change as it relates to its identity, its history going forward, even in a kind of new electric driverless world?
Ford should never change the blue oval. It should always be there in one way, shape, or form. I'm wearing our brand new design Ford Racing. We just rebranded Ford Racing, I want to say in October. And the oval carries weight with it so that you can put the word racing underneath it. And it could have been Ford trucks. It could have been anything. The Ford only has a couple of brands. We have the Ford Mustang. We have the Ford GT/racing, but most people, if they know Ford versus Ferrari before they know anything else. And we have the F Series. And in Europe, we had the Transit. Outside of that, we don't have brands. Explorer, Expedition, Edge. I mean, they're all start with E, but they're not a brand. Uh, and so Ford needs to keep the blue oval. I know the Mustang will never change. It'll always be a two-person, or it'll always be a sporty vehicle as long as Bill Ford is alive. And actually, I know his son Will loves the Mustang every bit as much. So the Mustang needs to be true to its ethos, and the F Series needs to be true to its ethos and be a working man truck.
When you have two brands together on a vehicle, so a Mustang is a Ford, a Bronco, but they all have their individual identity.
Yeah.
Maybe even a Lincoln, as part of the Ford family. How do you sort of blend? No, blend's the wrong word, but kind of like connect both of them so the vehicle has its identity, but the company has its identity attached to that as well.
There are knockdown, drag out fights at Ford over that question. And I've been in a room where I've seen them because the Mustang doesn't need the Ford badge to be a Ford. It's a Mustang. Bill Ford, uh, for better or for worse, always says it. The Mustang is a Mustang, you know. But Ford needs to gain the equity of the Mustang being a popular vehicle. So the Ford badge has to be on it, in my humble opinion. The same thing with the Bronco. If you look at the back of a Bronco, there initially was only going to be a rearing up Bronco on the back of it, and the Ford Blue Oval was not going to be on it. So it was a knockdown drag out to get the Blue Oval. And in my discussions with Lori Maday, I'm like, Lori, we got to have the oval on there somewhere because otherwise you're building a brand that you don't have any equity to. Coke example. What if Coke made Sprite the biggest brand in the world, and there's no Coke on there. A fine product of the Coca-Cola Company. You you lose the equity if you don't have cross branding on there.
Sure, it's a balance. Another question that gets a bit more colourful. Um, Coke was very lucky to appear on album covers and great artists, as you know. Ted, you've touched all that great artwork. From a popular culture standpoint, has Ford ever been given that sort of red carpet artistic treatment in popular culture by either musicians, artists, anybody around the world that would stand out like the Coke artwork does.
They have, but it's different, James. And I spent James was fortunate to see the Coke Archives, where we had this amazing collection of popular art, that had been the Andy Warhols. We had 120 Andy Warhols and all this amazing art. Artists haven't really touched on Ford very much, except in the realms of movies and music and videos. If you think back to it, Gone in 60 Seconds, Eleanor becomes a character of the car, that famous Mustang, and Bullet, the chase scene. And uh, I created, in fact, I can share it with you if you want to share it out. I created a YouTube playlist of 49 videos, musical videos that all feature Ford or Mustang, not even Ford, Mustang at the center of the music video. So Taylor Swift in one of her breakup videos, she's driving a red Mustang, and that playlist, the videos in that playlist have been seen like billions of times, and the Mustang in almost all of them is a character in the proceedings. Ford versus Ferrari is another good one. Ford Racing, the GT program. Ford versus Ferrari, and nobody's going to ask a question about it, is a fantastic movie, but it's an excellent work of fiction. There's not a whole lot of truth in it, which drives the Ford family crazy because the actual story itself would make a fantastic movie. But the GT program and the fact that Ford is going back into F1 with Red Bull, there will be a big announcement on January 16th with Red Bull Ford unveiling the engine for the new car. So, there's certain things that just resonate like that, and but Ford never got the artistic treatment that Coke did. Not many
Yeah.
brands do.
Another question back to color from Aiden, and this idea that, and I've noticed driving around, it just seems to be so many gray, silver, black, white. And then actually, I was in China a couple of months ago, and I was blown away by the vehicle colors. It just like was on fire, and I just wondered, or part of the question actually, I should say, is it because those neutral colors are cheaper? Is it cheaper to buy a white, black, silver, grey vehicle from a new perspective versus a more flamboyant, exotic color? Or is that just the preference of many people today to go more neutral?
Preference of people today. When we do exotic colors like the grabbers, we just did a different grabber green. Uh, it's a niche market. So we may sell 50,000 Mustangs in grabber green, but the predominant color is going to be white and red and black. It's interesting. The most color is a very discussed feature in vehicles online, internally, external, So the new one that we did that everybody loves is desert sand. So go Google desert sand Mach-E or desert sand Bronco. And the desert sand Bronco is one of the most popular uh, selling colors. I just ordered my new Bronco. It's great working for a car company. I get a subsidized lease, and every year I have to, air quotes, have to order a new car. So I just got a
Damn.
Heritage Edition Bronco. It's going to be black with a white grille with red Bronco spelled out in the middle of it. And I chose it over the Brittany blue is the other color that you see. If as you go driving around, I bet you will see cars is this robin egg kind of blue. Brittany blue, a heritage color that goes back to the 60s. Brittany blue was my other choice for that Bronco. And I went with black just I didn't feel I felt like I would stand out too much in a Brittany blue car. It's a personal choice.
There's always a lot of airtime given to Pantone's color of the year, isn't there? I think it was it now Cloud White or something for next year. I can't remember. I've seen it. But it does create brands, from fashion and kind of, trend, etc., etc. Feels like Ford, or you've got that legacy, you've got that color heritage, you've got that permission almost to. Is it ever something that Ford do as well? Is launch that color of the year from a vehicle perspective that actually could also potentially penetrate, kind of other brands and other things that we see every day.
We haven't, but that's a brilliant idea, and I'm going to steal it. Thank you.
Okay,
Well,
as long as
we
you send me that color in a Bronco, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we were doing something similar to that with those announcements of what the colors had been. That one I pulled up from 65 that talked about oh, here were the colors last year. But when I read that one yesterday, I was thinking the first thing I came to because I just got my Spotify Unwrapped, and I'm an Oasis #1 fan, and I thought this document is just like a Spotify Wrapped, talking about what had happened in that year. But if a color of the year for a vehicle would be an interesting one. The other thing that you'll see a lot of, particularly in the Ford world, are the metallic colors. People love the mystic blue metallic where it has this different sheen to it. Where if you look at it from a distance, it almost looks black, but when you get closer, you can see it's blue that has the sparkles in it. And that is a more expensive process, and that is a upgrade in the paint scheme. I was just in Los Angeles and we opened the Mustang Immersive. If anybody's LA based, go see the Mustang Immersive over in the Arts District. I highly recommend it. It's got a 4D ride. We gave the Mustang the Van Gogh treatment. But as part of it, they gave me a Mustang to drive, and it was one of the crazy new colors that has the sparkles baked into it. And I was like, this is kind of cool. And the guy said, well, it should be. It's a $2,000 upgrade. So on some of the crazy ones like that, it is more expensive.
Final question from Rick. I'll paraphrase. Thanks, Rick. I think today's identities are not just about colors, names, logos. There's a sense of an experience, and sonic identity has obviously played a major role in the last decade or two as we are on devices and listening to brands. It's obviously part of every vehicle, that Mustang sound. Is that intentional, or is that just kind of come out of the design and the engine creates a sound, of course, but maybe it's to do with the door closure. Maybe it's the on-off button. Maybe it's the indicator. All those kind of like micro sounds within a vehicle. Is that makes up the entire identity? Is that part of the design process as well? I'm sure it is, but does that come to the forefront when you're marketing the vehicle?
Yes, two different answers on that. The sounds you hear when you get in the car are part of a group that is called the HMI team, Human Machine Interface Team. I work with them. They're based out of Palo Alto and Detroit. Uh, they do regular tours of the archives. So yes, and I've actually sat in on those uh, sessions where they'll play the different door chimes and the different noises, and they do internal and external surveys. So there's a ton of thinking that goes into that. Every single thing about that car communicates from the way the key fob feels to everything about it communicates. The engine sound is fascinating because that goes back way back, but really came to the fore with Carroll Shelby in the 60s and Ford Racing in the 60s, where we would do stylized recordings of engine sounds. We actually produced a record of engine sounds for distribution to, what a GT 350 sounded like, what a Ford GT 40 sounded like, and people love them. They were given away via dealerships, but since that time, we periodically go back and re-record the engine sounds. I was just in a meeting the other day, and my team had to pull together the audio recording of every generation. There's been 7 generations of Mustang. We had to get audio recordings of the engine sounds, both revving, starting, constant start of every generation of the Mustang for use in different projects. And frankly, if anybody's driving a new car that you hear loud engine sounds, probably it's piped in. I drive, my current drive is a Ford Explorer ST, the Sport Track one, and it has an engine. Uh, and when I put it in sport mode, it pipes in engine sound, so it sounds in the cab as though the engine's really performing when it's just fake sound.
Wow, great. I was going to ask that, but we're running out of time. That's for another time. Whether the future quiet electric vehicles will have fake sounds built in to give us that roar, I don't know. But talking of
Can I,
sounds,
Stellantis just announced that the new chargers, electric charger, will have a automotive rumble, so the auto industry will move that way. You have to make the electric vehicles make noise, by the way. So when it backs up, and they always have that weird hum. That is, I don't know if it's by law, but it's because people can't hear an electric car if you don't make that fake sound.
Most brands today, want to create that brand experience. And I think a vehicle, a car, Ford's been doing it for 100 years. It's all there, isn't it? The experience of driving it, buying it, kind of the touch points within there, the branded moments, the noise.
The new Lincoln
So
Aviator, if anybody, I know we're over time, check out the Lincoln Aviator. Amazing. It has a full console. You can actually show a TV show on the right side. It's the most amazing new car that I've seen in the 8 years I've been at Ford. Check out the Lincoln Aviator. It won Design of the Year for the interior design and the layout of the cockpit. And they call it a cockpit too, which is interesting. So Lincoln Aviator, hands down, amazing vehicle.
great. Well, I hope you're on commission for these mini sales pitches, Ted.
And I've got I've
Ted,
got three I've got three codes left. If anybody wants a Ford, hit up Jane's and I'll give you a friend and family discount. They expire on January 1st, and I've got three of them left.
there you go. That's a little bonus for everybody. Um, Ted, thank you very much. Talking of cockpit, we're out of time. I'm at the airport, so I'm going to run. But this has been great, just to think about what we do every day in our day-to-day kind of, execution with other clients, but just to see that storytelling. Thanks very much, Ted. Really
Thanks,
appreciate your
James.
time. I know you're super busy, and you did put your email out there, so expect maybe a couple of people might either message you or reach out to you on LinkedIn and stay in touch. But thank you, Ted, and thank you for everyone for joining us today. We try and do something different every month. This has certainly been that, and I appreciate everybody's time dialing in. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks much.